1965, Chess Records, Leonard Chess's office. The tape boxes sit on his desk like evidence. No phone call first, no warning. Just Chuck Berry's latest recordings, delivered the way you'd return a library book. Chess cuts the tape and pulls the first reel. He already knows what this means. Berry's done this before. Vanish for weeks, then flood them with material. But this time feels different. The songs are sharp. Berry's guitar still cuts like it did in '58. It Wasn't Me has that narrative punch. Ain't That Just Like a Woman swings hard. Chess can work with this. But something's missing, not in the music, in the air around it. Berry hasn't returned a single phone call in 3 weeks, won't confirm tour dates, won't sit for photos, won't do the one thing every artist has to do in 1965 if they want to matter: show up. The album is finished, Chuck Berry is already gone, and Leonard Chess is staring at a product he can't sell because the man who made it has disappeared. Not literally, but in every way that counts. Rewind 6 years, 1959. Chuck Berry is untouchable, not famous, foundational. The Beatles are still nobodies in Liverpool learning roll-over Beethoven note for note. Keith Richards is studying Berry's guitar solos like sacred texts. Little Richard can scream, Elvis can move, but Berry? Berry built the entire machine. Maybelline, Johnny B. Good, Sweet Little 16. Every guitar player alive is trying to copy something he invented. Then the arrest. The Mann Act conviction. The trial that had less to do with law than with a black man in America making too much money and refusing to apologize for it. 20 months in federal prison. He walks out in October 1963 into a world that's already moving on. The British kids who worshipped him are now outselling him. Motown is redefining what black music can be. Polished, pop-friendly, unthreatening. Bob Dylan is twisting rock lyrics into poetry. Berry walks out of prison and rock and roll has left without him. Chess Records needs him back, not for art, for survival. The label's bleeding money. The R&B market is fracturing. Berry's still their biggest name, but that name won't mean anything unless he records. So they push. They schedule sessions. They make promises about promotion, about getting him back on the charts. Berry shows up, but he's not the same man who walked into prison. The sessions for Fresh Berries don't happen like normal albums. No producer camping out at Chess Studios for weeks. No band rehearsals. No creative vision meetings. Berry arrives when he feels like it. Sometimes with musicians he's worked with before. Sometimes with session players who've never met him. He records fast. 2, 3 takes, then it's done. Then he leaves. No small talk. No hanging around. No building camaraderie. The songs themselves sound fine. It Wasn't Me has that classic Berry storytelling. A guy dodging blame with wit and rhythm. Ain't That Just Like a Woman plays with gender politics the way only Berry can, half joking, half serious. His guitar work is immaculate. You can't teach that. But the feel is different. The '50s sessions had hunger, electricity, the sense that something was being invented in real time. These sessions feel like a job being finished. Chess tries to build momentum anyway. They need a single. They need Berry to commit to a release date, to tour dates, to anything that looks like a campaign. Berry won't commit. He'll play shows, if they pay him cash up front. He'll record, when his schedule allows. But the machinery of being a recording artist in 1965, the interviews, the TV appearances, the glad handing with DJs, he's done with that. Chess doesn't understand it yet. They think it's negotiation. They think Berry's playing hardball for a better deal. They don't realize he's already made his decision. He'll finish the album, but that's all he owes them. Here's the problem Leonard Chess can't solve. Chuck Berry doesn't need Chess Records the way Chess Records needs Chuck Berry. Not anymore. Berry spent the 1950s watching white artists get rich off his innovations. Pat Boone covering Maybelline and sanitizing it for white radio. The Beach Boys lifting Sweet Little 16 into Surfin' USA without credit. The British invasion kids treating his catalog like a public library. He went to prison while Elvis stayed free. He lost 2 years while the Beatles became the biggest band on earth playing his music. So when Chess asks for an album, Berry gives them one. Professional, competent, exactly what the contract requires. But he's not giving them his heart. The musicians feel it. These aren't the sessions where Berry's cracking jokes, pushing arrangements, discovering sounds. These are workmanlike recordings. Berry plays his guitar parts perfectly, sings his vocals cleanly, fulfills every technical requirement. But there's distance. One session player later recalled the vibe. Berry would arrive, run through the song twice, nail it on the third take, then pack his guitar and leave. No celebration, no listening back, just work. It Wasn't Me gets finished in an afternoon. Ain't that just like a woman in 2 takes? Other tracks, covers, blues standards, get knocked out efficiently. Berry's not making a statement. He's not sabotaging anything. He's just refusing to pretend this means what it used to mean. The album that was supposed to be his comeback is becoming something else entirely. A resignation letter disguised as a record. Summer 1965. The album's nearly done. Chess is panicking. They've got a Chuck Berry album with no Chuck Berry promotion, no tour announcement, no single climbing the charts. The Beatles just released Help. The Stones are writing Satisfaction to #1. Dylan's gone electric and broken folk music in half. And Chuck Berry, the man who invented this, won't even return their calls. They book him a handful of shows, state fairs, small venues. Berry shows up, plays 45 minutes of greatest hits, collects his fee in cash, and disappears. The crowds go wild anyway. Because it's Chuck Berry. Because Johnny B. Good still hits like a freight train. Because hearing the real thing, even a distant professional version of it, beats any imitation. But Berry's not interested in their nostalgia. He's 39 years old, not washed up, but the industry's already writing about him like he's a relic. The founding father, the pioneer, the legend, all past tense. So Berry makes a calculation. He can play the game, beg for relevance, chase trends, try to prove he still matters. Or he can finish the contract, take the money, and walk away on his own terms. Fresh Berries wraps in September. The final track list is solid. Blues rockers, story songs, a few covers mixed in. It's a Chuck Berry album. It sounds like him. But it lands in 1965 like a message sent to the wrong address. The world's moved on, and Berry's decided to let it. November 15th, 1965. Fresh Berries hits record stores the same week the Beatles release Rubber Soul. It's not a fair fight. No hit single, no radio push, no reviews in the major music press. The album doesn't crack the Billboard Top 200. Doesn't make a dent in the R&B charts. DJs who used to spin Berry's records don't even know the album exists. It's not a flop. Flops get attention. Fresh Berries get something worse. Silence. Chess scrambles. They push It Wasn't Me to R&B stations. They buy trade magazine ads showing Berry with his guitar, trying to remind people who he is, what he built. But 1965 is too crowded. The Rolling Stones are at their peak. The Who are smashing guitars on television. The Byrds are inventing folk rock. Motown's churning out hits like a factory line. Young white rock fans, the audience that should be buying Chuck Berry albums, are chasing something newer, louder, weirder. And black audiences? James Brown is redefining funk in real time. Motown's proven that R&B can be sophisticated, pop-friendly, crossover-ready. Berry's blues-based rock and roll feels stuck between worlds. Too raw for pop, too old-fashioned for the new underground. The album sells modestly, enough to not be a disaster, not enough to matter. Berry predictably says nothing. No press statement, no explanation, no attempt to spin it into something it's not. He just keeps playing live, sporadically, unpredictably, always for cash. And Chess Records realizes what they should have known from the beginning. Chuck Berry doesn't work for them anymore. He never did. The commercial failure of Fresh Berries doesn't end Chuck Berry's career. it clarifies it. He's no longer a recording artist in the way the industry defines it. He's not building a catalog, not chasing trends, not reinventing himself for each new generation. He's a touring act now, a jukebox of his own greatest hits, a legend who shows up, plays Johnny B. Good, collects his fee, and leaves. For the next 7 years, Barry will release albums when he feels like it. Chess will keep putting them out, hoping one catches fire. None do. But Barry doesn't need them to. He's figured out the math. One Johnny B. Good played live at a state fair pays more than 1,000 album sales. And he doesn't have to share it with a label. It's a kind of freedom, but it comes with a cost. Barry's influence on the next generation is enormous. Eric Clapton calls him the master. Keith Richards says everything he knows about guitar came from Barry. George Harrison learned rock and roll by copying his records. But Barry's contemporary relevance is evaporating. He's becoming a nostalgia act at 39. Still young enough to be dangerous, but the rock press is already writing about him in obituary language. The pioneer, the architect, the founding father, all past tense, all reverent, all dismissive. He invented the language, but he's no longer allowed to speak it. Here's what's strange. Over the next decade, Chuck Berry becomes more important by doing less. The 1970s bring rock and roll revivalism. Creedence Clearwater Revival builds their entire sound on Berry's blueprint. The Faces, Led Zeppelin, the Flamin' Groovies, they're all playing variations on what Berry invented. The British invasion stars who outsold him in the 60s start publicly crediting him. Keith Richards calls Berry the source code. John Lennon says, "If you had to give rock and roll another name, you might call it Chuck Berry." Then, 1972. Berry records My Ding-a-Ling live in England, a novelty song, a throwaway. It hits number 1, his first chart topper, at 46 years old. Critics hate it. Call it beneath him. Call it a joke. Berry doesn't care. It proves what he's known since 1965. The industry wants what it wants, and he'll give it to them when it suits him, not before. Fresh Berries stays obscure through all of this. It's not rediscovered by crate diggers, not hailed as a lost masterpiece. It just sits there in the discography, solid, professional, forgotten. But guitarists keep finding it, players who study everything Berry recorded. For them, Fresh Berries isn't a comeback album or a commercial failure. It's just more Chuck Berry, which means it's worth studying. Fresh Berries didn't change music. Chuck Berry had already done that. What the album represents is subtler and maybe more important. The moment Berry stopped playing the game on the industry's terms and started playing it on his own. That choice, to refuse the comeback narrative, to reject the album tour promotion cycle, to treat recording as a side hustle while touring became the real income, Berry proved it was possible. The Grateful Dead would do it. Neil Young would do it. Prince, in his own defiant way, would do it. The idea that an artist could reject the corporate machine, refuse to beg for relevance, and still survive, still get paid, still matter. Berry showed it could work. Not through Fresh Berries specifically, but through the attitude that created it. By the time Berry was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986, first class alongside Elvis and Little Richard, Fresh Berries was a footnote in his catalog. But Berry's refusal, his insistence on cash up front, on respect, on doing things his way or not at all, that became part of the foundation. You can't separate Berry's influence from his defiance. The guitar riffs mattered, but so did the refusal to bow. Fresh Berries is not Chuck Berry's best album. It's not his most important. It's not even particularly memorable. But it's the album that shows what happens when a revolutionary decides the revolution's already over and refuses to keep performing it for nostalgia's sake. Berry didn't owe the world another Johnny B. Good. He'd already written it. Didn't owe Chess Records a hit. They'd made millions off him. Didn't owe the British invasion kids his endorsement. They could pay royalties if they wanted his blessing. What Fresh Berries teaches us is that legacy is not the same as career. That influence is not the same as relevance, that you can invent an entire genre and still refuse to be its mascot. Chuck Berry walked away from the center of rock and roll in 1965 because the center had already taken everything it needed from him. Fresh Berries is the sound of a man fulfilling a contract while planning his exit. Not with bitterness, not with rage, just with the cold clarity of someone who knows exactly what he's worth. And in its own quiet, unbothered way, that's the most rock and roll thing he ever did.